This is part 4 of my attempt to make a diagonal paddle steamer engine using a set of castings I bought earlier on in the year. Right, the next thing I'm going to have a go at is machining up the cylinders, which fit to this point here, and in an ideal world the centre of the cylinder will be in the centre of the crank. Now, because of my less than perfect workmanship, and it's not CNC, as best I can measure, I think the distance from this face to the centre of this crank is 0.71 of an inch, and actually on the other side, somewhat depressingly, the distance from this face to the centre of this crank is 0.75, so there's a 40th difference this side to this side in terms of these centres. A bit iffy, my measurement is difficult to take. So I need to allow for that when I'm boring the cylinders out. I don't think I actually videoed it, but I stuck the rough cylinder castings in the on the table of the milling machine, and I've just cleaned up various faces, and in theory these machine faces should be identical from one to t'other, so that I can think about setting things up in the forejaw to machine the bores. The cylinders are handed right and left, and you shouldn't mix them up really, because there need to be drain cocks on the bottom. Once again, I'm struggling a little bit with the drawing, but I think that what will be the port face is supposed to be level with the inside of the frame. So clearly at the moment that's not the case. So I'll need to machine a little bit off of here, but I think I need to proceed with caution, because I'm not absolutely sure. The drawing to me doesn't look absolutely clear that that is what is intended. Looking at this drawing more closely, it appears to me that in fact the port face of the cylinder block in fact is supposed to just poke through the side frames by a small amount. So my previous statement about making this port face flush with the side frame, I think, is incorrect, and I better not do that. I've roughly filed up the steam chests to fit on each of the cylinders, so I think the next thing perhaps I'll do before I start to bore the cylinders is to machine these steam chests to size, thickness, and get the centre of where the valve will be right before I move to finally boring out the cylinders and fitting covers and things. May not come out too well, but I've carefully centre popped the two steam chests 3/8 in, and in the middle of the steam chest, approximately 3/4 of an inch each side here, ready to drill and tap for the spindle for the slide valve, etc. So I now need to set these things up in the four-jaw and get them to run accurately one by one. The slide valve of this paddle steamer engine, this is kind of the slide valve case, but the tail rod fits into a hole at this end with the boss. On some models I've actually made this bit removable, but anyway, this is all one casting, and a standard 1/8 drill isn't actually long enough to drill into that. So what I've done, I've taken a standard 1/8 drill, turned the end down to 3/32, found a bit of 1/8 ground rod, drilled the end of that 3/32, inserted the end of the drill into the rod so it's a sort of seamless 1/8, and Loctited them together to create a long drill, which I haven't done yet, so that I can drill the far end. How's about that then? Very good. The cylinder casting is set up in the four-jaw with the rough cast bore running reasonably true, I hope. I decided my carbide tip was blunted, so I've changed it. I have no idea what a difference. At this time I'm simply using this 3/4 inch diameter drill as a gauge, because this end is relieved and is about 0.728 or something, so when that slips in we are not far off, and I'll then decide. I think the next thing I'll do is machine the two steam chest covers. And what I really like about these castings is they've kindly included a boss on each casting so that I can hold that in a chuck and face the inside off and just machine the small recess before probably stick it in the milling machine and finish off the outer side. But the boss is a really good and really useful thing to have. Which will obviously be removed ultimately, but very good. This is one of the piston rods. I've put a 2BA thread on the end. I've already prepared the piston blank by putting a 2BA thread in it, and also just countersinking it a fraction by 1/4 of an inch, so that when it screws onto the rod it'll go over the shoulder. It'll go over the shoulder of the rod, and I will then finish turning the piston on the actual rod that it's going to mate with. That is the plan. I struggle to do things one-handed. There we go. Just got to cut off the temporary chucking piece and then sort it out. The piston is about 0.753 OD, which technically is 3 thou oversized, supposed to be 3/4 of an inch, but it's being machined to the cylinder that it's got to go on, and that's about right. So clearly I bored the cylinder slightly oversized, that don't really matter. Next job, put a groove in for the O-ring. The O-ring I'm going to use is nominally 5/8 internal diameter and 3/32 wide. Curiously, my thicker parting off blade is 3/32 wide, but it's not a good idea to make it the O-ring a dead tight fit, so I will widen the groove by at least 5 thou. Nor is it a fantastic idea to make, in my view anyway, to make the O-ring a dead tight fit in the groove with its inside diameter. So I shall make the bore, if you want to put it that way, on the piston for the O-ring slightly smaller. Technically, if I did all my measurements right, the parting tool needs to be fed in about 64 thou, but I shall go a bit deeper than that and probably go 68 thou, something like that. The idea is that there is some room for the O-ring to move about a bit, which in my view is generally gives a better result. Right, I fitted the O-ring. Arguably the groove might be a little bit wide, but the O-ring's a fairly decent fit in the bore, and with just a minor amount of encouragement it goes in, so I'm going to say that's good actually. So these are the two roughed out cylinder end covers for this paddle engine. I've the Boss is temporary, that's just for machining purposes, that comes off. But I've cleaned up the worst of the castings, including I haven't bothered totally. The two ends, so they'll sit flat on whatever they're going to sit in. Now, the critical dimensions are the distance from here to here has to be 1 inch, and that needs to be pretty accurate because that's where the guide bars will fit, so that's got to be about right. And the hole for the piston rod in the middle also needs to be about right. That's 1/4 inch in diameter, and it needs to be about right in relation, needs to be in the middle of these two faces here when they're done. And the other thing that's got to be done is a register has to be turned on this outer face about 1/16 of an inch deep, where the inner part is a good fit in the bore of the cylinder, so that everything lines up. And the question is, how do I do all this? I've done this sort of thing before, but it was so long ago I can't remember, so I'll have to reinvent it. About what feels like 1,000 years ago, a very nice chap I used to play badminton with had a home workshop, professional workshop, with a really professional lathe, big thing, and he got a contract to make professional quality darts, which he used to make on his lathe, all finely balanced, etc, etc. And part of that was to install what I think he said were tungsten tips for the darts. And when the contract came to an end, he'd done what he'd done, he was left with loads and loads of these tips, which are very handy from time to time. I make scribers and things out of them. I mean, they'll see me for the next 12 centuries. Anyway, the point about these tungsten dart tips, or whatever they are, my friend assured me they were kind of precision ground, which they needed to be, and I find them occasionally handy for sorting out the centre line of the rotary truck with the centre line of the mill, which is what I'm doing here. Now I dare say you could do all this sort of thing using dial gauges and I know not what, but I prefer to do things by eye. So in theory this boss is now centred on the centre line of the milling machine, that way and that way. So the plan is to put an accurate 1/4 inch diameter hole through the centre of this boss, and then at the same setting move the table 1/2 inch in each direction and mill across the ends, so that I hopefully end up with 2 flats 1 inch apart, which do need to be fairly accurate to locate the slide bars for the crosshead and whatnot that's required. I'm starting off with a 6mm drill, which is slightly less than 1/4 inch, and it is a new drill, so hopefully runs fairly through. The rotary table index is set to 0, so if I, in the appropriate place, mill one side of this and then rotate this table 180 degrees and mill the other side at the appropriate place, we should end up with 2 parallel surfaces about the right distance apart. Here's hoping. I think I'm going to stop. Best I can judge, this mic's up at about 9/1000ths of an inch too wide. Probably better too wide than too narrow. And I'm going to stop. I could chase it, but I think I'll leave it there. And by eye, everything looks to be about in the middle. Very stressful. I've marked out the steam chest for where I think the studs have got to go. And what I'm going to do is I just drill through the steam chest 6BA tapping size, which is 3/32, so that I can transfer these positions onto the cylinder for the final drilling and tapping of the cylinder block 6BA. That's the plan. Having got the first 2 holes spotted through, drilled and tapped 6BA into the cylinder, and some temporary studs, bolts or whatever, just holding the steam chest in position to line everything up, I can now spot through 3/32, tap in for 6BA on all the other holes into the cylinder, and then open the rest of these out clearance. I haven't got any correct stock 105, 110 diameter to make 6BA studs, unsurprising really. I should have actually chosen a different diameter for these. Anyway, never mind. So I've been having a go at making some studs which have to pass through the cover, the steam chest, and into the steam cylinder itself. So I've been making a few studs, and of course it's a complete cock up really. And why? Well, I forgot that the steam chest and cover goes this side and the cylinder goes the other side, and these studs have to be long enough to pass through the lot. And they're not, of course, because they're at least that's about 1/8 of an inch or so wide, and these studs therefore are all about 1/8 of an inch short. I think I'm going to have to start eating more fruit or vegetables or something to regenerate my brain. I don't know really, something's here, oh dear. Right, what I've got to do here is to spot through the steam chest onto the frame of the engine, so that the studs can cylinder studs can pass all the way through into the cylinder from the steam chest cover. So I'm kind of hoping, I mean, I've only got to get a couple in to start, and then I can use those to fix everything together to finish the rest. See how we get on. I don't want to go all the way through the steam chest into the cylinder, because the cylinder's already drilled and tapped these 6BA ones, so I've got a sort of very gash stop on the drill, which I'm going to use to drill through the steam chest and then stop short of coming out the other side. That's the plan anyway. Well, I'm sort of getting there on the right hand cylinder. It's in. Obviously the studs are not in because they're all too short at the moment. I've got to make them again. But it fits where it touches, as you might say. At this point I'm hand tapping the 6BA threads into the face of each of the cylinders. Bit of a fiddly job, this one. Having machined out the ports in the cylinder block, what's got to happen is at each end of the cylinder I've got to, and this is set up all wrong, I've got to machine ports from the cylinder to come out in this this slot here. If I've got it right, I think this is the wrong way round, because if I drilled it now it'd come out in the bore. But the angle of this face needs to be set about 35 degrees, so I'll set it up and we'll have another look. So this adjustable square is set at an angle of 35 degrees, and that face, this block, is parallel to the rule, which means in theory, give or take, that face is also now at 35 degrees, which means if my fiddling about is correct, when I drill 2 ports through here, they should appear underneath in what effectively is the inlet port. Fingers crossed. A small flat machined, just to give something for the 30-second drill to get started in. So I'm just using a pointer, and it's all been done by eye really, to mark out the 2 points that I want to drill through to first of all miss this the thread for the end cover, because we don't want to come into that obviously, so hopefully it will go to one side of that, and hopefully, you probably can't see it, the drill will pop out in that slot there. Who knows? Well, you can't be unlucky all the time, or at least that's my theory. And trust me, these diagonal holes come out in these exhaust ports. You probably can't see it really, where they're supposed to, give or take. That'll do. Right, this is the front cylinder end cover. And what we're making here is the gland nut for the packing. The drawing says to thread this 1/4 26, but I had a 1/4 32 die to hand set up, so that's what we're doing. Won't make any difference, and yeah, all goes together quite nicely. So I think we're going to be alright, hopefully. All standard stuff really, just indexing round for the 6 1/16 holes for the Tommy bar to adjust the gland when it's in place. I've shown all this before really. Homemade indexing arrangement on the back of the tailstock. I'll go around once with a centre drill and then swap the centre drill out for a 16th drill in the chuck, and that's it. Just tidying up the face of the what will be the slide valves, the castings. The idea is that they'll both be the same when I'm done. So I've made 46 studs of various lengths, longer ones into the steam chest, shorter ones into the two end covers. 46, actually I've made 47 because I dropped one of the longer ones and for the life of me I can't find it, so I've had to make another one. They've all been mostly turned down from 1/8 mild steel rod, turned down in a collet on the lathe and threaded at each end when I cut them off to length. I don't know if I'm the only one who does this, but I find that to finish these small threads, once you've sort of made them, is to actually put them in a die holder through the back and just wind the thread down again. It just cleans them up and makes them a better fit. And I actually use 2 6BA die holders in this process. This one, which is the finishing one, and another one homemade in my homemade die holder with my homemade attachment in the tailstock of the lathe to run them up. And I have to say, for this job, the ability to jog the lathe and run it in reverse when you're threading these small rods is a complete boon, and I don't mean Daniel Boone. Anyway, 47 with the last one. I think they're all done. Some of them do need still trimming properly to length, but my life is too short. I'll get on to that, I suppose. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Part 5 will hopefully follow in a month or so, and will probably include the connecting rods, the crossheads and the crosshead guides.